All right. Hi, good morning, and good morning to everyone. I have the pleasure this morning of introducing you to Marita Golden. She is an award-winning author of over 20 works of fiction and nonfiction, and her many books include the novels The Wide Circumference of Love, After, and the memoirs Migrations of the Heart, Saving Our Sons, and Don't Play in the Sun, One Woman's Journey Through the Color Complex. Her most recent work of nonfiction is The New Black Woman Loves Herself, Has Boundaries, Heals Every Day. She is the recipient of many awards, including the Writers for Writers Award presented by Barnes& Noble and Poets and Writers, an award from the Authors Guild, and the Fiction Award for her novel After, awarded by the Black Caucus of the American Library Association. She has lectured and read from her works internationally. Of note is that she's co-founder and president emerita of the Zora Neale Hurston Richard Wright Foundation. She's a veteran teacher of writing at many universities, including the University of the District of Columbia and the Virginia Commonwealth University, Johns Hopkins University, and George Mason University. She was a guest on the Oprah Winfrey, and as a side note, she is also a question on Jeopardy. I need to know more about that, Marita. As a literary consultant, she offers writing workshops, coaching, and manuscript evaluation services. So, welcome, Marita. I am so very glad to have you here today. I'm excited about our talk. And I want to just say that having someone of your expertise and background in this summit is such an honor for me. And I have to say that I came to you through one of your books, and it actually, The Strong Black Woman, it gave me a lot of support when I was preparing a talk for Black women veterinarians to talk about how we need to re-language how we show up in the world, that we've been given the burden of
Hmm.
carrying titles, responsibilities, labels that
Hmm.
are not ours to carry, that are not ours to even consider carrying, but because of our uh, community, how we're raised, and how we're treated, we tend to take on that burden, seem to feel that we have to wear that cape
Yeah. Hmm.
in order to succeed in the world. So I'd like for you to talk a little bit about that if you don't mind.
Yeah. Well, the strong black woman and the new black woman are kind of, I call them sisters, sister books.
Mhm.
And I came to write The Strong Black Woman just before the pandemic started. I had an episode where I thought I was having a stroke. And I wasn't, fortunately. Went to the emergency room. They checked me out, but they said, why don't you have an MRI? So went to my doctor, had an MRI, and found out that sometime in the distant past, I had had two silent strokes. That
Wow.
is, strokes that are very quick, fast. You may not even know that you've had a stroke, but it does kill brain cells. And my parents died. My mother died when I was 21, my father when I was 23. And I decided that I was going to be very, very healthy so that I could live longer. So I embarked in my adulthood on a regimen of exercise, meditation. If I felt that I was falling apart, I went into therapy. I developed a very wide and diverse network of friendships. I did all the things that we had just begun talking about in the 70s, but that now are part and parcel of the general conversation about health. And so I left the doctor's office feeling like my body had betrayed me. But actually, in fact, my body had done what I wanted it to do. That is, I inherited from my mother stroke. The stroke's in my genes.
Mhm.
Heart attack is in my genes. My father died of a heart attack. And those two strokes that I had were not fatal.
Mhm.
They were quick strokes. And yes, I did lose brain cells. But the fact that I had erected a wall of health through trying to have a good diet, watching my mental health and my physical health, going to doctors regularly, that prevented that genetic heritage from being fatal.
Right.
So I thought about that, and around the same time, everybody on the internet, Black Twitter, was talking about how Black women needed to rest, relax, and I wanted to be part of the conversation. So I started delving into the strong Black woman, the super Black woman, the Sojourner Truth
Right.
syndrome,
Right. Right.
and wrote a book that talked about my experience as well as the experience of other Black women, particularly around seeking mental health care. I thought it was
Right.
really important in that book to talk to Black women who had been through therapy and found therapy healing, helpful,
Right.
and that it changed their lives positively. And they were willing to talk to me because they knew this was going to be in a book, and they knew it could have that kind of impact.
Right. Yeah, that's wonderful. And thank you so much for sharing your story because I think we need to have this open conversation more often about how self-care is healthcare. It is, it has to be intentional. It has to be intentional. And you have to figure out what that means to you because for everybody it's different. But that it is a lifestyle choice, isn't it?
It
And
definitely is. It's
and
not something,
you're living proof of that.
yeah,
You're
it's
living.
not something that, oh, suddenly I feel like I'm having stroke,
Yeah,
but I feel like I'm having stroke even though I just finished doing my exercise. So
right.
we never found out what exactly was going on that day, but
Mm,
we do know that it led me to write a book.
yeah, right, 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 right. So I I guess I want to ask you when you were on the Black Twitter space and talking to women about this issue of the strong Black woman and self-care, et cetera. What was the common challenge do you think seemed to come up in conversations that Black women, regardless of where they were or what they were doing, what was a common challenge that they faced?
Setting boundaries was the biggest
Mm,
thing. The
wow.
you know, the ability to say no to others and yes to ourselves. I
Mm,
mean, women are fine with going to a therapist. Okay. I mean, this generation of young Black women has no problem going to a therapist. And I have in various talks and presentations said, you need to talk to your grandmother and your mother about that. And to show you how much things have changed, I was working with a woman who's probably in her late 40s, early 50s, and she is a therapist herself, and she suffered considerable trauma as a child.
mhm,
And so she's been in therapy, she works with others. And her mother had suffered considerable trauma as a child. Well,
mm.
her mother in her early 80s went into therapy.
Wow.
And I thought that was so amazing.
Yeah.
So that more and more of us are beginning to see that we can ask for help.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the asking for help that seems to go across lines. It's not just boundaries, it's self-care, it's taking the time to go to a therapist and ask the questions or be asked the hard questions and taking the time to answer them for yourself and to get that clarity about what it is that you want and need and not being ashamed to ask for what you want
Mhm.
and need that is
Yeah, yeah. But in my conversations with women, with Black women, the big sticking point is always, how do I say no? I can't do that. I don't want to do that. And that's a skill that is learned over a lifetime. And
Mhm.
it's something that requires that we unlearn what was drilled into us by the culture, the society, and our families. And it is not easy, but it's very, very necessary. And I think that probably if I was to be asked one thing that I think it's most important for Black women to do, I would say set boundaries. Because if you set boundaries, you're going to protect yourself in all ways. You're going to say, no, I can't solve your problem because actually, I have problems of my own.
Mhm.
And setting boundaries will allow us to see, we see setting boundaries as always saying no. Boundaries are also about saying yes.
Yeah.
We set the boundary that includes going to the doctor, that includes walking, that includes meditating, that includes having regular checkups. That's a boundary.
Right.
One of my good friends is a very, very, very high profile a woman of achievement. And she told me that a couple of years ago, she was doing a program online where she interviews other high achieving super Black women. And this woman had survived breast cancer. And during the interview, in her mind, she remembered that she had not had a breast exam in 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
After the interview, she made an appointment, and she had breast cancer. She
Wow.
had early breast cancer,
Mhm. Mhm.
which was detectable and treatable.
Right.
But this is a woman, and this is the striking thing, that the ways in which African American women neglect their health has nothing to do with class. You can be a Delta, a Link, Kamala Harris, sister on welfare, whatever, across the board,
Right.
across the board. And that's the most astonishing thing.
Right. Right. And I think this conversation about boundaries is really close to my heart as well, because when I talk to women, one of the things that comes up is I want to be able to set boundaries without guilt, because the extra layer is, if I deny someone else, then that's going to be perceived as being selfish or self-centered, or, a
Yeah,
negative
yeah, yeah.
connotation that they don't want to take on. And my response is, setting boundaries isn't about that. It's about letting the world know that you honor yourself and you want others to do the same. You are asking for people to see you.
But
And
that's so radical.
yes,
That, that,
well,
that's revolutionary.
it is
Absolutely.
radical and it is revolutionary, and damn it, we need to do it. It's required. This radical revolution of Black women standing up and standing for themselves and saying, "I'm here. I'm important. Me, right here, right now. I have all of this beauty, this brilliance, these gifts to share, but I have to be whole in order to do that."
And
I have,
the core of it is loving yourself.
yeah.
And what's really gets people in trouble, what really people gives them a brain headache is when I say love yourself first, love yourself
Yes,
before anybody else. And
yes,
that's totally something that they can't wrap their heads around. Because if you love yourself first, you have all this love to give others. If you
absolutely.
love yourself first, you take care of yourself. So that means that you show up in ways, all these people that you're worried about disappointing, you
Yes,
show up for them better if
right.
you love yourself.
Yourself.
If
And
you're not fuming with resentment
yes.
because you caved in to do something for the 10th time that you really didn't want to do.
Right. It's the overflow. I think the Bible says, when your cup runneth over, you are actually giving from that overflow, and that overflow allows you to give more and more and more. But you cannot pour from an empty cup.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
And we become depleted oftentimes when we put all the things ahead of what we're feeling we need. And so tapping into that feeling instead of pushing it down and dismissing it or diminishing its importance, I think putting things in reverse and saying that inner voice is telling me that I need to do something for me. It may be go to the doctor. It may be exercise more. It may be take a moment to just have a cup of tea and read a book. Those small things allow us to
Exactly.
take the time to fill ourselves up. Well, tell me about your new book.
Well, after The Strong Black Woman was published, I got many people asking me to write about my specific health practices. A lot of The Strong Black Woman is talking to other women. I weave in some of my story. And so it's about my practices around self-care that have been a part of my life for all of my adult life. And it's not something that's set in stone. It's always evolving,
Mm,
always growing. And the book is called The New Black Woman, Loves Herself, Has Boundaries, Heals Every Day. And as I alluded to when I was talking about my parents, their early deaths, I began these practices which were really foundational. And they helped me not just in my physical body, but in my writing, in being a mother, being a wife. And the first one is loving yourself. And I think that's really hard. You said a minute ago about women getting connected with what they need. Many times we may need to go into therapy to get connected to what we need, depending on what kinds of childhoods we had, what kind of nurturing we had. We may be totally disconnected from our deepest needs and our deepest feelings. And
right,
so a lot of women may be afraid of being alone because when they're alone, all their demons come
rise
up
up.
and they
Yep.
don't know how to deal with that. So they stay busy, because being busy, they can fight the demons. And I often say that's where a sister angel needs to step in, someone who's on the path of radical mental and physical health care, and say to this sister, stop, let's talk. And it may take a number of conversations, but I think those of us who are on the path owe our sisters direction when we see they need direction. And loving yourself it's a lifelong journey. I mean, when I wrote the book, Don't Play in the Sun, about the color complex, that was a healing for me,
Mm,
because I had grown up with a mother who, on the one hand, told me that I was going to write a book one day. And then on the other hand, told me that I was going to have to get a light-skinned husband for the sake of my children. And when I wrote Don't Play in the Sun, I got very deep into the color complex and understood how she could be the mother who could say both of those things.
yeah,
So
yeah.
loving yourself is the hardest thing, but it's the most necessary thing. And then when you love yourself, you will set boundaries. I
Yeah.
mean, I do days of silence, which
Mm,
is setting a boundary. I'm not going to talk because I want to listen to myself. Last year, my husband gave me as a Christmas gift 2 days in a hotel to just be by myself. And he
yeah.
respects my need. Of course, when I'm away, he can play the piano as loud as he wants. He jokes that he has orgies while I'm away, but I know that
Oh,
doesn't.
that is so funny. Yeah.
And so time for myself, silence, going to the doctor, listening to my body. I mean, we'll have something that is bothering us, and we will put off going to the emergency room. Oh, when I was doing the Strong Black Woman, I talked to a cardiologist, and he said Black women come in at the last moment. They
Wow.
come in just before the heart attack's about to strike. But if
Wow.
it's someone else in the family, oh, they will
They
get the
got them
kids.
there. They
They'll
got
get
them
the
there and they're
husband.
with them.
Yes,
Yep.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. And so, and all of my friends, my friendship circle, my sister circle reflect this journey that I'm on.
Right.
So I think that the thing is it's a lot of little things that are embedded into your life, and it's a lifestyle. It's not something you can do over the weekend.
Yep. And it starts with making a mental shift, stopping
Mhm.
long enough to say, what can I do to create the first small boundary?
Mhm.
Folks get turned away because they find themselves in a place that they don't want to be, but they don't know how to shift to that place where they want to go. And the space in between seems too huge to overcome.
Mhm.
And I always say journeys are taken one baby step at a time. So
Mhm.
what is the very one thing you can do
Mhm.
today?
Mhm.
Just today,
Mhm.
tiny thing, a request, a
Mhm.
shift, a moment. It doesn't have to be big, but it does require intention and choice and making that first step.
Mhm. Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
so show your book. I want to see what the cover looks like, and I want the audience to see what that looks like, The New Black Woman. And
Mhm.
how can people get a hold of that book?
It's on any books. It's you can order from any bookstore.
Bookstore.
Yeah,
Okay.
any bookstore.
All right.
Amazon, whatever. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I will tell you, I totally enjoyed The Strong Black Woman. It really assisted me in the conversation that I wanted to have. And it was one of those things that um, you know, my journey as a Black professional woman, I could see places in my life where I was challenged, being the only one that looked like me in a room full of white men, and knowing that I belong there, but having to explain myself and wanting to show up in a way that imparted a that I knew that I belonged there. That impacts a lot of your personal, it can impact a lot of your personal relationships. And I saw the journey that I had, and I certainly wanted to have a conversation of support of a lot of the young Black women that are coming through the veterinary pathway that are being challenged with.
Well, whenever I was working in largely white environments, universities, for example,
Mhm.
I would always form a sister circle
Yeah,
with the other Black women who were
right.
um, either at that school or at another school, but were in similar situations.
Right.
And we would meet once a month
Yeah.
for lunch, potluck, dinner, and just the ability to vent and share and network and come up with
And do it
solutions.
in a space where you know you're safe, that you
Yeah,
know
yeah.
that because folks talk about psychological safety and those kinds of things, but oftentimes Black women just aren't safe. So we can't, we can't do the things that some individuals say we need to do in order to move to that next level. We've got to determine our own language of how to navigate those spaces, uh, and create that circle of safety, that circle of confidence, that circle of where I know that I can show up with my authentic self,
Mhm. Yeah.
and be able to trust. I call it the circle of trust. Trust that there are individuals within this circle that have my back. But that's important to have your sister circle, which I think is separate.
Well,
Uh,
in a sense, I think I try to carry my sister circle with me wherever I go
mhm,
so
mhm,
that the confidence and support that I feel from that and from my relationship with the people in my life who love and support me, I
right,
try to take that into these hostile environments.
right. Yeah, but you have to have it. You have to figure out. how to have it, and you have to have it. And I'm hoping this summit will allow us to open up in our conversations in our individual communities as well as with each other to figure out how to create that is sustainable, that we have a lot of sisters feel like they're doing this alone, that they're by themselves. And some folks are in isolated environments where there are not a lot of women
Mhm,
that
mhm.
look like
But
them.
that's the advantage of of Zoom and the
And
internet. I
right.
mean, we have a long tradition of Black women quilting together,
Yes.
working in the Black church together,
Right.
working on, for example, one of the incredible ways that Black women formed sisterhood was working in the civil rights movement,
Yes.
working on these kinds of issues. So that if we look back and if we look around, we will see all these models of sisterhood, young
Right.
women, but the internet is funny. On the one hand, it brings people closer, but it drives them apart too. And I've had many conversations with young Black women, for example, who are creatives, who are artists, who want to start groups. And I said, look, I started a single parent group long before the internet. I put an ad in the paper,
Mhm.
and I'm just surprised that the internet is not all, a lot of people are not finding community on the
Right.
internet.
Right.
They're
Right.
finding rancor and put downs and anxiety, but that doesn't mean that that community doesn't exist. Maybe you need to go face to face with someone.
Right, right. And I think the intention has to be there of what it is that you want to create and what it is that you want to have. If you put out there, I want to create a community of Black women where we can have a conversation in the privacy of our Zoom room that is honest and has I think about, I have a coffees and conversation thing that I do periodically, and it's just women, Black women that come together and we talk about whatever is alive for us in the moment. It may be childcare, it may be parent care, it may be, navigating a challenge at work. But you know that when you're in that space, that it is safe to say what's on your heart. And it almost without exception, when someone takes the step, the brave step to say something that's on their heart that they are not sure how it's going to be received, without exception, somebody else raises their hand and says, that's me. I am so glad you said that because I thought I was alone. So, what you're saying is so true, Marita, in terms of our finding a way to find our communities and to have these conversations of support.
And to be brave enough to create communities. Very
Yeah.
often people will say, well, I want to, for example, I will often do writing workshops. And out of those workshops, women, mostly because they're mostly women, will form a support group where they will meet on their own. And one
Yeah.
of the groups has been meeting for, oh my God, about 3 or 4 years. And they online every Sunday, free
Right.
writing. And
Right.
they just decided recently that they were going to meet in person. So they all went
Wow.
up to Philly and met,
Nice.
you know.
Yeah.
So we can, people for some reason don't have the confidence to believe that if they reach out, there are others who will want what they want. But I say, if you want it, somebody else wants it.
Yeah. Yeah. I I know that our time is coming to an end, and I have enjoyed our conversation
Oh,
so very
definitely.
much. I want to ask you if you could tell the women that are listening to you right now one thing that you believe would be revolutionary for their lives, what would it be?
Do something for you. Do something just for you because it makes you feel good.
Good. Yeah. 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 So very true and so very simple and so very difficult at the same time,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, and something beyond buying a new dress
Yeah.
or even
Yeah.
getting a manicure, something on another level that
Oh,
makes you feel good. Challenge
yeah.
yourself to
Yeah.
think about other things that make you feel good.
Right. I tell folks, tap into that inner child.
Mm-hmm,
You
mm-hmm,
know, what would make that little girl happy? Just allow her to giggle and be
mm-hmm.
pleased with herself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Think back to what that might have been for you and then go do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just do it, as they say.
Just do it.
Just do
Just
it.
do it. Well, thank you so very much,
Well,
Marita.
thank
This
you,
has been
Dr.
a
Pat.
pleasure. How can people get in touch with you if they want to?
Well, they can contact me through my website,
Okay.
ritagolden.com,
Okay. I'll
or
put that
they
in the
can,
chat.
yeah, or they can email me directly at maritagolden.com. Either
Okay.
way, they'll be able to contact me.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so very
Thank you.
much.
This was nice. And
Yeah.
thank you for doing this. This is very important.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate it. And thank
Okay.
you for joining me. You were my first person who said yes. So I want to shout you out for that because you gave me confidence to keep going.
Well, I try to say yes. Years ago, Shonda Rhimes of Grey's Anatomy fame wrote a
Mhm.
wonderful book called The Year of Yes.
Yes, I remember
And
that.
nobody would have thought, looking at her, that she was a bundle of insecurities
Right.
and spent a lot of her life saying no.
Yeah.
And if that's a great book, in addition to my books, but it's a great book, I suggest The Year of Yes. And it
Mhm.
charts how she grew emotionally and just began to flower. And I try to say yes most of the time, unless it's something that I think is going to harm me or waste my time.
Right.
But I
Right.
try to say yes. I like to support Black women who are doing really important things.
Well, thank you for saying yes.
Mhm.
All
Thank you for
right.
asking.
Yeah. Okay.